Okay, what were the big highlights for you from the print last night?
Yeah, so we're looking at the AI revenue guidance that keeps increasing exponentially. It's been several quarters in a row now that Broadcom is raising that guidance, and we're now looking at more than 100 billion in AI revenue for next year. So that kind of takes us back to what the type of revenue that Nvidia had back in calendar 24. So Broadcom, which, as you know, is really focused on custom ASIC, is really lagging Nvidia by 3 years. But if you look at where Nvidia was as a stock 3 years ago, it kind of speaks for itself in terms of the potential Broadcom has, ahead. I think the other key point was the ramp of the Anthropic wax. That's something that's scheduled to begin in the second half of this year, and there was an expectation earlier this year that this will be somewhat dilutive to gross margin, and that's something that Hawk basically denied on the call last night. So I think there's been some adjustment in pricing, which makes this ramp now gross margin neutral, which is incredibly positive for the stock, because I think that was one concern that investor had. And then finally, kind of summarizing kind of the new takeaways from yesterday's call, the networking business is very strong. I mean, you look at the Tomahawk 6 networking chip that Broadcom is ramping, started to ramp a couple of quarters ago, and it's now, a little bit more than 1/3 of the total AI revenue for the quarter. So very, very strong demand. That's the best networking switch on the market today. That's also higher margin, so that's also going to help the mix. So it was a very strong quarter. Finally, the company, mentioned that, they don't expect to have all of the custom ASIC business. Clearly, there's been some noise around MediaTek potentially ramping part of the Google V7 inferencing chip, but we'll see how they execute. This is something very, very difficult to do. Hawk, the CEO of Broadcom, went at length yesterday to kind of explain, the advantages that Broadcom has in terms of technology, in terms of execution, and how they've done this for 20 years. So we'll see. But I think Broadcom is very well positioned to basically capture a leading market share of that growing custom ASIC business, which is so important for AI.
I have to tell you that we've had a lot of analysts on the show. That was probably the most comprehensive summary of a quarterly results that someone has given. So I want to thank you for all of that because there was a lot there. I want to get to the call itself because I was watching the share price after the results came out and it was pretty flat. And then Hawk 10 starts talking on the call, and you alluded to some of these comments here. That's when the share price started to really tick up. And drill down into what was it he said about these 5 to 6 customers. I mean, we know that there's OpenAI, there's Meta, there's Anthropic, Google. What was it that he said that was so encouraging to investors about the work with these 6 customers?
Yeah, so in addition to the gross margin profile, for Anthropic, which again was a little bit of a concern to some investors before because they didn't know how to really quantify that drop in gross margin in the second half, was, to your point, really the customer diversification. You have Anthropic, ramping to what is slightly above 3 gigawatt of deployment next year at Broadcom. I mean, it's hard to say on a customer basis, but that's probably close to 60 billion in revenue. So it's not exactly a small amount. You have Meta that is ramping as well. You have OpenAI that's going to generate a little bit more than 1 gigawatt of deployment next year as well. So this year is mostly Google, but you have a host of very well-known key names with strategic agreements in place, for several years that are ramping as well. And that customer diversification is also useful, particularly in the context of Google, potentially giving some business to MediaTek on the inferencing side. So it was, I think, really reconforting for some investors to hear that there are other customers ramping. Google was the only customer for which Broadcom did not provide a gigawatt estimate for next year. Our estimate is that it's going to be about at least 4 gigawatt, perhaps more in ramp next year from Google. So Google is going to remain the key customer, which is a good thing as well, because Google ultimately today has the highest performance custom ASIC on the market, which hasn't really changed. They've been leading the way and really the only competitor to Nvidia since '99, the pre-AI day when companies were already racing to have a custom ASIC to compete against Nvidia. So it's nice to see that. I think Google will continue to have very good momentum, and the channel feedback we get is that Google volumes are going to double this year and double again next year. So really,
But what about the MediaTek threat here and all this? I mean, MediaTek for people who don't know, I mean, they're kind of the low cost entrant to this market. How much share are you projecting that Broadcom could lose to MediaTek, and is that concerning to you at all?
Okay. So out of the doubling of TPU units, which is total Google custom ASIC for next year, which is going to be about 7 to 8 million units, the capacity that MediaTek is being allocated from what we call POAS, which is a spatial advanced packaging that is typically used for AI chip. If you look at the capacity that MediaTek is being allocated for next year, it's about 2 to 3 million units out of the 7 to 8. And Ironwood, the V7 TPU is going to have two versions for the first time. The training version, which Broadcom is going to retain 100% market share, and the inferencing version, which presumably is going to MediaTek, versus the V6 today, which is a chip that does both training and inferencing. Again, I think Huck did a tremendous job yesterday highlighting how difficult all this is to ramp. And to your point, MediaTek doesn't have the experience in the background doing this.
But are you concerned about MediaTek for Broadcom?
So I think we think that ultimately MediaTek is going to get less market share than the allocation, the 2 to 3 million unit allocation that I've mentioned, just because of difficulties, ramping. I mean, MediaTek was already late by 6 months, actually taping out that chip, last year. So there's already a delayed ramp. So people clearly are going to watch this. I think it's clear with the size of the customer ramps that we see, again, from Anthropic, OpenAI, and others, that there's going to be customer diversification. We have in our note a path to $35 in EPS by 2034, and that's assuming some share loss.
Let me ask you two more quick questions. Customer-owned tooling, that is something that we hear a lot about. Is that the same as the MediaTek threat, or just break that down for us?
So, there is a big part of the design, the front-end design of the chip that's done by the hyperscaler. Google acquired a company years ago called DeepMind that gives them capabilities for that. Broadcom is bringing a lot of their own IP to co-design the chip. And then it's really function of the balance, right? How much front end Google or someone else like Anthropic wants to develop in-house as opposed to giving to Broadcom or someone else. So, but Broadcom has a lot of IP, and I think that they can do pretty much something that no one else can do. I mean, you've seen some of the issues that Marvell has had, ramping AWS Trainium 2 last year. So Broadcom, may not have 100% market share. That should be completely expected. But back to your earlier question, I think the customer diversification is such that we're not too concerned about, Google starting to diversify their business. Ultimately, Google has such a lot of momentum in units that they need at some point to use more than one supplier.
Right. And last question for you. We had a longtime Intel exec on the show yesterday, and I asked him about the memory chip shortage. And his comment was, look, it's the memory chip shortage today. Tomorrow, it could be a networking chip shortage. And so he was looking out for any sort of language around supply chain crunches. Did we get anything in that vein at all from Broadcom?
You bring a very good point. So Huck, the CEO of Broadcom, yesterday mentioned how they've secured the supply of critical components, including HBM memory, all the way through 2028. And they basically saw the trend. So back in 24, they started to already build those inventories. They basically put supply agreements in place, not only for substrates, with the Japanese supply chain as well outside of Taiwan. So that's also part of the value add, right? At the time when people are struggling to get HBM memory, which is a bit more than a half of the total custom ASIC, Broadcom has the product. You don't have to wait, 3, 4 months. You don't have to pay double the price because suddenly you realize that you have, a shortage of supply. They have the product, and they can even tweak the product for you, the memory for you to augment the performance. And that's also part of the value add, the value proposition that Broadcom offers to their customers.
Great. Well, Tristan, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Tristan Gerra from Baird here on TI TV.